Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Suresh Raja, and I am Medical Director of Mitochondrial Rescue. I just want to thank you for your time today. I've been a surgeon for 30 years now, and I happen to be very thankful for my second career in mitochondrial rescue. And today's talk is entitled Mitochondrial Rescue and Metabolic Flexibility. Energy is everything. Our objectives today is to talk a bit about mitochondrial medicine as an overview, talk specifically about our flagship product, Carnosine Extra, and our Carnosine Extra specific research. We'll touch on heart rate variability, which we use, our mitochondrial rescue practitioners use to help in dosing, as well as how you might want to participate in our telemedicine ecosystem and perhaps participate in our complementary training. Well, we know mitochondria make up 95% of all energy that our cell makes. And we know that it can either use fats or carbohydrates to make that happen, with fats producing 9 to 10 times the amount of energy as compared to carbohydrates. This energy is in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is what the mitochondria produce. They need oxygen in order to produce that ATP. More bioenergetic tissues such as brain and muscle would have more mitochondria per cell than others. We know that mitochondria are also responsible for apoptosis. We'll touch on that briefly. We also know that they, in and of themselves, produce free radicals in the process of making ATP. Calcium levels are becoming increasingly more important as we understand more about voltage-gated calcium channels, as well as how mitochondrial pores work. In fact, mitochondria in general are actually very sophisticated, and the research is really increasing in volume. A lot of it is secondary to, of course, studying the genetics of the mitochondrial DNA genome, but also because our imaging techniques have gotten better. We have things like cryo-electron microscopy and specific live dye nanoscopy, where we're able to view the mitochondria as well as the electron transport chain much better. For instance, we know that mitochondria can connect via nanotubules to other cells and crawl through like a chain and kind of donate mitochondria to other cells that might need energy. We know that they participate in fusion. More the better, consensualocracy. We know the opposite to be true. Fission can occur. We also know that they respond to light, both positively and negatively, red and blue, respectively. We know that they can uncouple and produce heat. Think of a hibernating bear or a brown fat. We also know that if something goes wrong with that electron transport chain, such as, let's say, cyanide poisoning, you will only last 8 to 10 heartbeats if you're not making ATP on a consistent basis. So it's best to love and mind your mitochondria. Not to go into too great detail of cellular respiration, but we know that larger molecules break down into smaller molecules in order to produce energy. The reason why I put the cell up here is just to remind you that glycolysis and the Krebs cycle both do not require oxygen, whereas, of course, oxidative phosphorylation does. Glycolysis occurs in the cell cytoplasm, and Krebs cycle occurs in the mitochondrial matrix. And, of course, OXPHOS, oxidative phosphorylation, occurs in the inner membranous area of the mitochondria, as well as the electron transport chain is embedded in the inner mitochondrial membrane. And here is a diagram reflecting that. And essentially all of the highly charged energy molecules produced in the mitochondrial matrix are serving as electron donors there at the bottom left, NADH and FADH2. And as these electrons are slinging through the electron transport chain, it generates a proton pump type of effect, which is one way. So all of these protons, they get sequestered in the intermembranous space to such extent that they build up a lot of potential energy as a result of that concentration gradient. And the only way to relieve that potential energy is for the hydrogen ions, the protons, to go through the nano-intelligent machine that we call the ATP synthase complex. And when that hydrogen comes through, that energy is transferred in the form of a high-energy phosphate bond, and that converts ADP into ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is the universal currency of life. Before we move on, I just want to talk about C4, which represents complex 4 of the electron transport chain immediately to the left of the ATP synthase molecule. And we can see that oxygen there on the bottom serves as the final electron acceptor in OXPHOS. And in fact, I would go far as to say the only reason we breathe oxygen is for that particular aspect of OXPHOS to occur. Because if we don't have something accepting those electrons, then those electrons can participate in damaging other structures, even in particular the naked circular mitochondrial DNA complexes that are floating around. We have about 10 or so copies of mitochondrial DNA in each mitochondrion. And they can be subject to mutation when they are kind of fried by electrons. So we really need to be able to accept the electrons, and oxygen does do that for us. So energy really is everything. And just to throw some numbers out at you, mitochondria represent 10 to 15% of our body weight. And as human beings, we contain enough energy to represent at least one lightning bolt, which is about 250 million volts. We make, let's say you weigh 70 kilograms, we make 68 million molecules of ATP per cell per second. And that requires 2 million molecules of glucose per cell per second. And if you were a marathon runner, elite, really in the middle of a race, you can burn through a couple dozen kilograms of ATP per hour of running. I mean, the numbers are just mind-boggling. Let's talk about free radicals. Oxygen represents the most abundant element in nature. And when it accepts an odd pair of electrons so that the electron is unpaired, it becomes a free radical. That is a definition of a free radical, a chemical species with an unpaired electron. And this can occur just in a normal course of OXPHOS, but it also can occur when you're exposed to ionizing radiation, when you're subject to chronic inflammation, if you have an excess amount of heavy metals, or even certain drugs can do it. Here we see the superoxide ion and the hydroxyl radical, which is particularly powerful and troublesome, represented here on the diagram. This represents the free radical theory of aging. When you do have an unpaired electron, all that chemical species wants to do is just attach to another electron, regardless of the damage it leaves behind. And it can impact every single element of the cellular machinery, from the lipid bilayer to the mitochondria to the DNA to the protein. And when that happens, it basically accelerates the aging process. So therefore, the free radical theory of mitochondrial aging. So here we talk about the cell danger response theory. And the concept here is that if you have a happy mitochondria that's producing energy in a fruitful way from its oxygen and nutrients, the nucleus is happy. But if the mitochondria is unhappy, secondary to some kind of external process that's stressing it, then it will produce less energy, and there's internal factors that would also be secreted by the mitochondria to let the nucleus know, hey, this isn't working out. We have to undergo mitophagy, apoptosis, autophagy, cell death. So who really runs the show here? Who holds the bank account? The mitochondria do. So mitochondrial influence matters. And if we consider health, to represent structure plus energy plus information, mitochondria matter in every single aspect of that equation. And to really just make a generalized concept for us to follow through on, it really is the mitochondrial electron flow or voltage and mitochondrial oxygen level that we really are trying to optimize. And if we can do that, we can certainly not only survive as a cell, but we can potentially even regenerate. Which mitochondria would you prefer to have in your body, the one on the left or the one on the right? Would you want leaky, rusty mitochondria that is producing a lot of exhaust, a lot of oxidative stress, a lot of free radicals, and very little energy? Or would you want something that's vibrant with intact membranes that's producing a lot of energy and very few reactive oxygen species that actually at this point serve as signaling molecules? Now we're going to talk about our flagship product, Carnosine Extra. Just to let you know, we're proud of our full product line. Most of our research has been done on Carnosine Extra, so we're going to concentrate on that today before we get to our practitioner program. Our main flagship product is Carnosine Extra, and the main product in the Carnosine Extra, of course, is our L-carnosine at 125 milligrams. It is GMP certified vegan and vegetarian, although carn means meat, and it was originally discovered in animal meat. Our product also contains 20 milligrams of CoQ10, L-carnitine, vitamin E, bilberry, and grapeseed extracts. Carnosine was discovered at the turn of the 19th century in basically ocean mammals. And the reason they really started studying is because they found that it had very many positive effects, extremely pleiotropic, a very good antioxidant. It is a very gentle heavy metal chelator that crosses the blood-brain barrier. It represents 1/3 of the buffering capacity of our body. It actually serves as a neurotransmitter. It helps nerve signals transmit, and it's anti-inflammatory, particularly reducing IL-6, which has gained some light in this past pandemic that we're going through currently. And it also inhibits glycation. So when sugars want to attach to proteins, it prevents that from happening. And if a sugar is already attached to a protein, it can remove that sugar and make that protein work once again. So pleiotropic. There are over 2,300 studies regarding carnosine on carnopedia.com, separated by a condition and category. So please feel free to view that resource. We made it just for you. L-carnosine is made by our own body. It is a peptide therapy. It just happens to be the simplest of peptide therapies in that it only contains 2 amino acids, a beta-alanine and an L-histidine. It's found in our most bioenergetic tissues, mainly skeletal muscle, heart, and brain. If you're male, if you're young, if you eat a lot of meat products, you would have a higher carnosine level. It peaks at the age of 16 and halves by the age of 50. It is produced in the muscles in the brain, broken down by blood and tissue. The main issue with it is that it has a very low absorption into the cells. If you were to eat a big steak, it would provide about an hour and a half worth of benefit. But not our product. Our product, Carnosine Extra, when compared to one of the more commercially available products, such as pure L-carnosine, has much improved bioavailability and pharmacokinetics. Really no comparison at all. It is almost logarithmically better in terms of intracellular concentration. It starts to absorb in 20 minutes. It peaks in 2 hours. And the breakdown, the half-life is such that BID dosing would be just fine. So you can see the vast difference between the two products, with Carnosine Extra being represented in the green. Well, why is that? It is that way because Carnosine Extra is not subject to breakdown by carnosinase. That is the proprietary manufacturing technology. That is the IP related to our product. So here you see 2 UV spectrographs of the intracellular concentration of Carnosine Extra with and without carnosinase added to it, and they are basically identical. So knowing that brain tissue in general represents a 20 to 25% energy expenditure, we at Mitochondrial Rescue decided to study carnosine extra mainly from a brain point of view in the role of neuroprotector and neuromodulator. We've done it in vitro, we've done it in vivo, and we've also published and presented it in humans, and we're just going to go over that briefly. We studied the antioxidative potential of carnosine extra, in particular with the hydroxyl radical, the nitric oxide radical, and lipid peroxidation. And when we studied these elements, we realized how superior our product was in neutralizing lipid peroxidation, much better than pure L-carnosine and 125 milligrams of L-carnosine, much better in terms of neutralizing the nitric oxide radical, with carnosine extra, of course, being on the left, and much better in neutralizing the very powerful hydroxyl radical. We took our carnosine extra and we placed it in a cell culture with neuroblasts, and what we found in a dose-response type of ratio at the sweet spot of the equivalent of 6 capsules of carnosine extra a day, we were able to produce differentiated growth of all 4 different types of nerve cells. So like a brain growth factor. We did an experimental autoimmune encephalomyelitis study, and what we found that basically mimics multiple sclerosis. And what we found at 6 capsules per day, there was significantly less demyelinated areas and less inflammatory infiltrates compared to the control group with experimental autoimmune encephalomyelitis. So we postulate that might be because we keep the blood-brain barrier more intact. There were no problems with the safety studies of all the different tissues either. We did another study where we observed rats for 5 minutes, per 5 minutes for 2 months at just 2 capsules equivalent of carnosine extra a day, and we found that they moved 40% more. So that includes intent, not just ability. We did a study of 5 MS patients with functional MRIs, and we saw some very positive results there. We did a 28 multiple sclerosis patient study, and we found that patients had much better health, much greater energy, and much reduced pain after 4 months of carnosine extra supplementation. Now, when we talk about carnosine extra and diabetes, we know, we've talked about it already, that it prevents glycation and removes glycolysized proteins, but it also stabilizes blood sugar level, prevents complications caused by diabetes, and regulates insulin secretion. And when we have excess glycation occurring, when there's insulin resistance and a lot of free glucose floating around, if the protein does become attached to a glucose and becomes oxidized, then we can get the advanced glycated end product, the AGE. And that's what it does. It ages you, except what happens is it wouldn't just be the collagen, for instance, that becomes cross-linked, which results in wrinkles. It would be every single protein from every single type of category there is, hormones, transport, DNA, enzymes, immune antibodies, all that. All of it would cause dysfunction because the proteins would become misfolded. And in fact, if they become fragmented, then they damage the tissue and you're subject to chronic inflammation. And as we know, chronic inflammation is basically the root of all disease. So we do have a very exciting 10-part study that's we're doing right now regarding metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. It is a mice, rat, and human study. And we'll be studying glucose, insulin, leptin, and cholesterol levels, as well as another run of the antioxidant capacity after 3 months of carnosine extra supplementation versus the control. This is an active study. They're very careful what they release when publication is just around the corner, but I was able to get them to tell me for this lecture that in terms of the mouse study, after they administered the oral glucose tolerance test, the carnosine extra fed mice had a rapid return to normal baseline glucose levels, whereas the control group did not. There was a very long delay before going back to baseline glucose levels. So what's good for the cell is good for the mitochondria. What's good for the mitochondria is good for the cell. So if we can buffer the mitochondrial matrix pH If we can crank up the production of ATP by enhancing electron transport chain function, and if we can keep the mitochondria intact without it swelling or opening its pores unnecessarily, you're going to protect the cells. If you protect the cells, you protect the tissues. If you protect the tissues, you protect the organs. If you protect the organ, you protect the human. So here, Mitochondrial Rescue, we tend to use heart rate variability as the most important non-invasive biomarker to help guide us with dosing and therapeutic response. So heart rate variability, for those who are not familiar, runs on the premise that our heart rate is not constant. It varies, and the more it varies, the healthier that you are. So we know that traditionally, post-diagnosis is nothing new. It's something that's been studied since ancient times, and we know that our body is constantly emitting signals to help us with diagnosis and interpretation. We just need to find the right fit for what we're trying to do. So at Mitochondrial Rescue, we use a 2000 hertz advanced heart rate variability device that we train patients on, complimentary, online, and this is what the report looks like. And essentially, we're able to measure the R to R wave heart rate variability 2,000 times per second. And not to get too into this graph, but the blue line here, labeled cardiointervallogram, this represents how robust your heart rate variability is. So if it's more plump, if it's more wavy, it's better. And if you look at the graphical analysis on the right side, starting with the histogram, if the data points, which are sex and age matched, are optimized for health, you would get most of the data points falling in the bell curve pattern within the two straight lines that you see under histogram. That's bell curve. It's shifted a little to the left, but pretty good. If you look at the scatterogram, we would expect all the data points to fall within the ellipse, but perhaps we would like it even a little fluffier than what this shows to show more diversity. Diversity is good. The spectral function on the bottom, this is more typical of what we would see for more commercial grade, lower frequency HRV devices with HF, high frequency, representing parasympathetic, rest, digest, heal, recovery, and LF representing sympathetic, fight or flight, and which stands for low frequency, and VLF, or very low frequency, are higher order energy frequencies, such as the immune system, the hormone system, complex cerebral communication, things of that nature. This particular HRV has two parameters that others do not, and that would be stress index. That's how our cells communicate with each other, or perhaps you could think of it as oxidative stress level, or mitochondrial exhaust. We also have a parameter that's called index of centralization, and that gives us a measure of hypothalamic function. We're just going to go over one case here, and this is an 83-year-old recently insulin-dependent diabetic with a cardiac history who wanted to get off his insulin. He was getting more and more tired. It's not something that he wanted for himself, and you can see from the graphical analysis that has a very restricted histogram. Not a lot of diversity there. And you can see from his scatterogram, it's almost pinpoint, not a lot of metabolic flexibility there, very tight. And if you look also at the blue line, the cardiointervallogram, low amplitude, pretty straight line, no waves. And we don't want to get too much into the numbers, but if you look at the stress index, it's very, very high. So it's the normal values between 70 and 150, and this one is 1,150. So tenfold raise. Or almost tenfold raise in what it should be. And if you look at the total power, the normal should be 1,000 to 2,000. It's very low at 147. And as an 83-year-old, you expect this person's mitochondrial reserve to be a bit low in general, but that's still a little bit lower than we would like. So we put him on a carnosine extra, and we tested him again in about a month. And you can see from his cardiointervallogram, it's a little bit more plump, not quite as wavy, but certainly more plump. He's gone to sort of a twin tower kind of look on his histogram, and everything shifted to the right. His scatterogram perhaps doesn't look quite as pinpoint. And if you match that up with his stress index, the stress index has gone to 350, so that's 2/3 less. And if you look at his total power, it's actually triple. And in this particular instance, he was able to increase his activity. He was feeling better, and he was able to get off his insulin. So why does carnosine extra work? Carnosine extra works because it repairs all protein structures in the body. It cleans out, repairs, and resensitizes all receptors. It encourages a much greater production of ATP, and typically these results start to show in about 4 to 6 weeks. And because of the different technology that we use, we're able to measure these results. Nowadays, we are in a very advanced technological environment. We have a lot of data that we're constantly looking at. There's a lot of wearable data that people are starting to get used to looking at as well. Telemedicine, I believe, is here to stay. So how do we adapt? We feel at Mitochondrial Rescue, we're perfectly able to adapt to that by providing wearables to patients in a telemedicine ecosystem so we can measure their mitochondrial voltage. And there are some commercially made devices that we do recommend. There's a 500 hertz device that I think is perfectly suited. You can mail it to the patient, or perhaps you get them to buy one. They're not very expensive. Set up a telemedicine consult with them, dose them accordingly, and check them out maybe 4 to 6 weeks later. We're particularly excited about this next device. This is our second wearable that we're recommending right now. It is available currently. Right now, it's only able to measure heart rate, respiratory rate, oxygen saturation. It does tell you how hydrated you are and how well you perfuse. Typically, these measurements also improve with the carnosine extra, but really what we're very much waiting for is the ability to measure mitochondrial partial pressure of oxygen. So that is available in the EU right now. We expect this to come out in about 4 or 5, 6 months, something like that. So now we have a telemedicine wearable system where you can not only measure mitochondrial voltage, but you can measure mitochondrial partial pressure of oxygen levels as well. We feel like this could make for a very powerful practice. And for those of you who really want to enter into the telemedicine arena, or if you're already in it, this could really accelerate your program a little bit better. So if any of this resonates with any of you and you're interested in becoming a mitochondrial rescue practitioner, there are several ways to do it. You could just open up a practitioner account, use whatever you're using in your office to follow results. And with this particular product line, actually, we have patients telling us that they're feeling better. So it's not that difficult. More difficult patients sometimes need to be titrated to effect with higher doses. So we can teach you how to do that. We do offer complementary training with our mitochondrial didactics. We do offer complementary online training with our HRV. We do offer the ability to get online with our mitochondrial wearables, and we have a dashboard that you can attach to, and this is all something we're very excited about. It's not quite ready for a rollout, and you can go any way you want, as fast as you want, as slow as you want. We're here for you. We know that this is a perfect venue to find practitioners that think like-minded like we do. So if you're interested in becoming a mitochondrial rescue practitioner, results that you can measure, please reach out to me at Dr. Raja at mitochondrialrescue.com. I really appreciate your time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. For me, mitochondria definitely represents the future. It's a very upstream way of looking at medicine, and with the technology that we have available and with our telemedicine platform, I really do think we can make a high impact and perhaps slow down the labeling of these big labels that are coming our way in pretty rapid way in today's modern world. So again, I'm very grateful for your time, and please do reach out to me. Our link has all of our research attached to it, all of our information about our product line, our white paper, and how to sign up, as well as our practitioner rates. So thank you very much.
Well, that was a great presentation. Okay, I'm sure people have questions, but before we get to the questions, Dr. Suresh is here, and right before we started the presentation, he came on and told me some exciting news that happened today, and I just think that you need to tell people that have just watched that presentation about what happened. Doctor?
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Pam. Well, one of our mitochondrial rescue clients is now the 6-hour world time trial champion in cycling. And it usually is not a event that's virtual, but due to the pandemic, it was virtual. So he was able to become a world champion in his own home. And obviously he's an elite athlete with elite mitochondria, the most elite. And he went 139 miles in 6 hours. And we dosed him according to our mitochondrial rescue protocols based on our HRVs. And I did put him in my hyperbaric chamber yesterday. And he gave us a lot of video testimony saying how he was not as sore, how it was much better than he had a championship run a couple of months ago. And he's going to continue to be rescued for every single event going forward. So we have a world champion now.
Isn't that amazing? That's great. And that just happened a couple hours ago. And so another kind of reoccurring theme in the conference is this HRV, this heart rate variability seems to be, if not an up-and-coming science, a valid science that maybe we haven't paid enough attention to. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Right. So I'm a medical device geek by kind of training. I've kind of helped design some medical instruments, and I'm always interested in the diagnostic side, being an ENT doctor, all the different fabulous ways we have to measure people's brains with, balance and hearing and smell and things of that nature. And really, you want something that is non-invasive, where all the technology is going, but you need it to have it be accurate. And a lot of the devices that are out there right now are between 150, 200 hertz, and they're very good. And they do help with measuring the autonomic nervous system. But what we have is more of a scientific research tool that is linked to a 70-year-old database that comes from a part of the world where energy medicine is not so foreign. And so, like the kind of device we have wouldn't be unusual to even see in ICUs in the countries that we get this technology from. And I think that's just starting to come over now, and people are looking for better answers, and it is part of the information age. I think there's a lot of devices that are out there. I have, my house is full of them, frankly. But there are, HRV is not going anywhere. You can just think about the Oura Ring. You can think about the Fitbit. And that is more parasympathetic, sympathetic, and what the ratio is. But you think about power levels, and you can just go really deep down the rabbit hole with it now. And it's something that everybody needs to talk about because honestly, to sort of distill it down, I really do think it represents mitochondrial voltage, actually, electron flow. And we are electromagnetic beings. We are no different than, a distant planet or a galaxy that we're measuring from far away, and what kind of information can we get from that? And we are already emitting this information constantly. It's just that the technology is meeting up with us now. And so we're at a very special time. We're kind of at a time where spirit meets technology is kind of the way I look at it.
Very good way to put it. Very good. So it's always been there, and now it's just kind of being able to be measured, and we're realizing the relevancy of this. I can remember in just my basic biology class, just recognizing carnosine as an amino acid that our body manufactures, non-essential amino acid. But who knew the significance of it 20, 30 years ago? Maybe we did. I wasn't taught it. So this is very new and relevant information. We've got 19 people still listening on the edge of their seats. I want you guys to go down, press that Q&A, and let's continue this conversation. Obviously, Dr. Suresh knows what he's talking about, and let's really talk about this product, L-carnosine, and mitochondria in general. I mean, you see before and afters over and over in the fitness industry. I'm a sports nutritionist by trade. I'm lucky enough to direct the organization that helps to regulate sports nutrition practitioners. And you see before and afters of heavy people and then lean people. You see people who competed and didn't do well, and then you see that they did well. Well, in this presentation, we saw before and after of a picture of a mitochondria, and that just made so much sense. So you want something that produces a lot of ATP and very little waste product that can be harmful, free radical, or do you want something that is the reverse of that? That just makes common sense to me, that one slide before and after.
Right. I mean, you talk about leaky gut, and then people talked about leaky brain. You know, I think we're in the leaky mitochondria era right now, for sure. You know, it's just, and you listen to Ben Bigman, Dr. Bigman, and he says how, well, the insulin resistance really precedes the glucose floating around in your blood. Well, actually, the mitochondrial disintegration, dysfunction actually even precedes the insulin resistance, right? So, and if we can measure it electrically, wearable, and have it available to patients that they can monitor themselves, connected to a community that is exactly like Low Carb USA, I think it's super duper high impact. And the metabolic study, which I'm not allowed to talk about, unfortunately, it got delayed, frankly, because when it comes out, it's going to be really big. It really, really is.
So there's something in the works that has yet to be published, huh?
Oh, it's a 10-part study, and they just don't let me talk about it until they get it out as abstracts at least. And it's glucose, leptin, insulin, cholesterol, and antioxidant capacity over 4 months in 2 different types of animals and in humans. And we're also going head-to-head against Lipitor and metformin. So it's
very
a big
exciting.
study. Yeah.
Wow, we need to stay tuned for that. You need to definitely tell us when that comes out. I just need you to reemphasize this, say this to me again, because there are a lot of people at this conference that are finally sold on the fact that insulin resistance is a precursor to diabetes and that it's able to be measured in fasting and insulin tests. But you're telling me that there's something else that is even a precursor to that. And obviously, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. So what are these markers you're talking about that are even precursors to insulin resistance?
Well, with our particular device that our practitioners can sign on to, one particular thing which is perfect for this conference in terms of VLF. Okay, VLF is very low frequency. It represents your immune system, your hormone system. You actually cannot burn fat unless the VLF is normal. Okay, so, and you cannot burn fat unless your total power is actually normal. So you could, do whatever you need to do, but if your VLF and your total power is not normal, guess what? You're not going to be able to burn fat. Your system is not metabolically flexible enough. So that's particularly prescient to this, this particular community. But what we see in general in terms of HRV as a whole, as humans, are a couple of different observations. I've been with this for like 2.5 years now. Is most people are very sympathetic dominant, low power, hypothalamus, hyperfunction, brain on fire. Okay, that's like the concept of how people are right now. And unfortunately, what I see and what kind of brought me to mitochondrial medicine in general, being an ENT in South Florida for 25 years now, is that younger and younger patients were becoming more autoimmune. They, coming in even with cardiac issues. They were on all these crazy intravenous medications. They certainly become more allergic. And we do the HRVs on them. They actually have a pattern that shows that their stress level, their stress index, their mitochondrial exhaust is through the roof, with very low power and with a hypothalamus that's actually burned out. So we see people under 30 that are really burned out. And it's very sad for me, actually, So I'm glad that we have that tool, and actually we can improve that with mitochondrial rescue. And it's a very easy thing to do. And in this BYOD day that we're living in, bring your own device day kind of day that we live in, I think we're perfectly suited for that. Let's see what else I can say that most athletes that are at an older age, as well as trained as they think they are, it's very easy for us to tell with even the lower frequency, lower bandwidth devices, certainly with ours, that most of them are not recovered. They're overtrained.
Yeah.
They just are. And so they don't necessarily realize it. I think that is where most of the HRV kind of momentum is right now for the professional athletes. I mean, if you talk to someone like, Messi, the soccer player, he won't go out and play a game unless he knows what his pre-game HRV was, what this post-game HRV was, what his recovery HRV was. So they're using it in that capacity. And, that whole biohacker world, and they're always trying to, be ahead that way. We can learn a lot from the elite athletes, but with HRV and where medicine is going, for instance, with our friend and colleague and fellow patient who's a world champion, those are the kind of people whose HRV that we study so that we could treat the people with chronic fibromyalgia, that we could treat the morbidly obese people that can't walk to their car. I mean, we all have a story. I have a wounded healer story myself. And so I know what it feels like not to be able to walk up a couple flights of stairs and, oh man, I wasn't like this last year. And so we can learn from the elite athlete with electronic data and then transfer it over to people who are everyday people suffering from chronic inflammation. Everyone has, our expososome, our exposome, we're exposed to so much now that's not natural, that we weren't before. And we have electrons flying all over the place and they're not staying in a nice straight line to produce that ATP.
And, so let's talk about this. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead, Jeff.
Let's talk about harnessing your product. How long has it been out?
So it's been with my manufacturer for about 8 years, and it started in the EU, and the provenance is that it is from Serbia, and it originally has a Russian provenance, and when the Iron Curtain fell, groups of scientists went to different countries, and we get ours particularly from Serbia. And what happened there was fascinating. They started distributing it because they knew it was going to be good to children who had cerebral palsy and other kind of developmental disorders, including the word that begins with the big A. And so they noticed that people were getting better, and they started calling up the company and said, hey, we're seeing this and that. These patients we're getting better, including with multiple sclerosis. And they went to the Serbian government and they got their first grant. And that's where all those original multiple sclerosis and antioxidative potentials went. And so for us, my founder is from the UK. She got a hold of it, and she's been a holistic practitioner for many, many years, Lilius Amhera. She went from 1 clinic to 5 in 2 years, with 2 of those clinics being dedicated to just people on the spectrum. And she saw, including her own son, had some dramatic results. And I mean, the concept is that it's very upstream. When you fix the mitochondria, you can fix everything, okay? And you end up sounding like a snake oil salesman, and that's not what we're trying to do. But if you're making more energy and you're studying how that energy is being distributed, and you see the results, and they're telling you the results, and patients getting off of their prescription medications and improving their health challenges, I had no other choice but to give up my practice and sort of try to promote the message. I would never think I'd be compelling.
It was that compelling for you.
Well, I mean, are you the person that's going to do it or not? I think that I am. Maybe someone else wouldn't be. And so I think it's important enough. I think people need it. I still do my surgery. I travel all around Florida. I go to Colorado. I'm just about to go to Texas doing my minimally invasive sinus ventilation stuff. And that's kind of like my day job. I think really the mitochondrial medicine is truly my second career. And if you could take a natural medicine that your own body makes, and you can measure how you can improve it, and it makes complete scientific sense. It's not so woo-woo. It's all math and science and research. Why wouldn't you do it? So
this makes sense to me. The comment that you said that it's upstream and thus proliferates into various different disorders and things totally makes sense. I mean, ATP is to the body as the almighty dollar is to the economy. I mean, where is it produced? Most of it's produced in the mitochondria, right? So it just makes sense.
We have thousands of cases, literally. We have thousands of cases in our archive, but this was a half-hour talk. And when I first introduced it, I introduced it to the Academy of Complementary Integrative Medicine about 1.5 years ago. We had a practitioner on it, and his practice was on it. By the time the conference came, he was a veteran guy there with 40 years experience. he was giving a talk on the results of the mitochondrial rescue after I was. So, you know, but it sounds too good to be true. That's probably the problem with it. And you don't need to do the HRV. You really don't need to. You can just get your patients on it, and we teach you how to dose, and you can see how it goes, or you could try it yourself. And, you know, the practitioner discount is pretty substantial. It's a pretty good chance to make some good revenue and help your patients at the same time, and have a dedicated product that not everyone else would have access to, because we are only practitioner based. You cannot find this anywhere else. We won't release it on the internet. You know, if we are going to have an e-commerce platform, it's only going to be through the practitioners. It's too important for it to be misrepresented and not used appropriately, and have all the trolls come out and say things. We don't want that for our product.
Right. So what's the demographic of people that are using the product most common? Obviously, there's a wide spectrum of uses, but
yes.
What's most popular?
So low energy, chronic fatigue, brain fog, those would probably be the top two. For me in South Florida, we have a lot of mold patients that are on it, Lyme patients if you're in New England. You know, in terms of the metabolic patients, I can't say that we have like a weight loss kind of program yet, but I think it would be a good part of making you metabolically flexible and efficient. We do have patients
who have...
There's a sports
performance application too. You just talked about your patient or your client.
So I think that would be the main next way to go. I think being a doctor for as long as I have, that's always something that really should probably be higher up on when I think about it and try to promote it. And I think that is the next big play for us. But right now we're picking up more brain health practitioners, and they're using it in conjunction with things like photobiomodulation. And I'm big into hyperbarics as well. And if you can stack, you know, really the concept is, what is your mito reserve? Okay, can we build your mito reserve, maximize your mito reserve, and can we slow down your mito decay rate? Okay, and that's really what it is. You know, we want to be able to increase your mito reserve, but also slow down your mito decay, figure out what your mito profile is, okay? And of course, that would be perfect for peak human performance. It's just that it probably should come to mind more for me. It really should. But I've been concentrated on the sickies for all my life, so that's tending where I go. And being a practitioner-based model, you know, we have not attracted that sports medicine set yet. They tend to be a little harder to get to, and you know, it would be fabulous for that. I'm sure people would beat their personal best. I take it before, you know, I play golf. My son takes it before he has finals. You know, there's all kinds of anecdotal stuff, but we're trying to make it so that it's purely science-based with results that you can measure. And so, you know, we do have a world champion now. He's like one of the first athletes that we really have, and now he's a world champion. So, you know.
That's good. That's good. Great testimony. I have 3 important questions. One, what are the prerequisites for a practitioner? If a practitioner wants to get involved and start to promote this product or get his clientele or his patients on it? Do they have to be an MD? Can they be a registered dietitian or holistic health practitioner? That kind of thing. Second is, what's the process and then training like? And then I know that there are people still in this room listening. There's 18 people, and some of them attend the conference who aren't practitioners. They're just looking for self-help and self-care. How would they get the product?
Right. So as long as you have a practice, you know, we have, you know, massage therapists with a good practice that uses a photobiomodulation. Like she sees a lot of traumatic brain injury patients. That's her little niche, and she has a practice. So if you have a practice, we're always listening. If you have a license that's attached to the practice, we kind of prefer that. If you're looking for help yourself, we are always here to help you. When you're ready to be rescued, we will always be there for you. The training itself comes in 3 different types. There's a no training. You can just watch a couple videos if you're interested in sign up for a practitioner account. It is a 35% discount for practitioners. And we have the formal training, which was meant to just be a weekend course. So really you can just sort of do it part-time for 4 or 5 days and you'll be done. It's not meant to be some kind of crazy module. You know, it's just, it gives you more of a basis on mitochondrial medicine, which people aren't necessarily so familiar with. And it also teaches you a little bit about the HRV. And once you finish the didactic portion, And if you wanted to have an HRV, we do have HRVs in stock of this type of nature. We prefer that to go to more higher volume practice just because they're kind of hard to find, and it's just a better use of the machinery. We sometimes will send it as a loaner for 3 months so people can learn about it. But that is a team viewer sessions with myself and my partner Lilius. So it's also online, and we just ship you the machine, and we get you. We have a lot of videos that you can watch how to do it. And then in terms of the mitochondrial telemedicine program, that's going to be really exciting. And so we feel that you don't necessarily need our highly sophisticated HRV. You could use the CoreSense, okay, which is a 500 hertz by Elite HRV, which we are raffling off. And please do enter it. Just leave your contact information. If you could use the CoreSense all by yourself, or you get the patient to buy it, that would be another way to have some kind of personal health familiarity with it, or even if you're a practitioner. So if you had the CoreSense, and if you had the new mitochondrial partial pressure of oxygen wearable system, those are things that retail for a little over $300 for both those devices. And that could be a whole telemedicine practice for people. And so we can gather their information, dose them. You can even mail it to them, and just stick it in a little envelope and say, well, why don't you just, we have a consult in 6 weeks, and let's just see what your data is like. Or they can just keep it, and you can just have them sort of, we have nothing to do with those companies. We just like the data that they're producing. So that's another type of practice that they can have. So, we're pretty adaptable. And as long as you have a practice, we are interested. We do have some high level scientific research, but we don't have our nose up like that. And, we just want to help people. That's all we really want to do.
Great. So,
the raffle does require people to go on my web link page and also fill out all the contact.
Where is that? Where is that?
You just click on Mitochondrial Rescue under the sponsor portion of the conference on the bottom there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all you have to do, because we need to have your contact information, and we'll raffle it off next week. We're raffling one off during this afternoon session too.
Right, you guys know where to find that, all right, and enter into the raffle. I know I'm going to.
So that's 500 hertz. That device is 500 hertz. Is the highest bandwidth out there. They have fantastic community support and education attached to them. Elite HRV, they're originally educational. They had a really good forum, really good courses to learn about HRVs if you didn't want to necessarily do our training. And then you can use the CoreSense, buy a couple of them for your practice, and very viable. I know from my own personal experience that you can dose with the carnosine and your HRV would improve even when it's peaking a couple hours later. So it's not something, if someone's really toxic and sick, it may not happen that quickly, but there's always a bump. And whatever parameter you want to use, whether it's thermography, whether it's HRV, whether it's your blood work, whatever it is that you want to use, we're pretty confident that our results, your patient's results, will improve. So we just recommend more bioenergetic wearables because we just think it's easier, and that's where things are going.
Very good. People are asking in the chat where to go.
Great, yeah. Yeah, we'd love to pick up some practitioners here. We think we can help a lot of people, and like I said, the pricing is such that it could be a nice source of side hustle for patients and helping at the same time, and sort of enter into the really upstream is the word. I did all that. I was a part owner in an IV center. I had a center with a lot of machines for the mitochondria, but I didn't have the mitochondrial rescue. And if you can make your mito stacks, whatever your mito stack might be, whatever you do is going to get better. So, for my hyperbaric center, we do hyperbaric oxygen. We do electroceuticals like scalar energy devices and pulsed electromagnetic fields and photobiomodulation. Of course, we do our mitonutrient stacks. And of course, the fourth stack will be a ketogenic stack.
Yes.
You see, so that would be all four. And the latest device that I've been using is no longer a wearable, it's a breathable. So I've been fooling around with the Lumen device, which I hadn't heard anyone talk about during this conference. I find it to be fairly accurate so far. I've been using it for about a month.
And these are not just diagnostic. They're therapeutic. They help to change
Of course, they're
Right.
community based, and I mean the lumen tells you how much fat, how much carb, and I don't know. I kind of go with the Keto Mojo, and I look at all this stuff, and like I said, I'm a medical device guy, and I
Yeah.
think that's going to be our third wearable. It's I think it's going to be the lumen, the breathable device. So it's wearable and a breathable.
So people are who are on here are asking that they don't want to move away from the conversation right now. Do you have contact information, or can you just say again your website where they could sign up for
my name is Dr. Raja, Dr. Suresh Raja, medical director, co-founder, and I could be reached at Dr. Raja at mitochondrialrescue.com. I am on Telegram, Mitodoc. My phone number is listed. My cell phone is listed right on the main web link, and I answer all my calls, especially it's from you guys. So it's 561-767-0721. I'd be happy to talk to you guys. Really, this is perfect. I'm telling you, this is perfect. If you can figure out when you're going to burn fat with the HRV, and if you could also figure it out from a breathable, and I mean, I just think where we're going is so exciting, actually.
Good targeted stuff. Leandro came in late and she wants to know if it's going to be recorded. Yes, it's going to be recorded. It is being recorded right now, and it'll be available in case you guys missed out on this great conversation. Pam just put in the chat where to leave the contact information. There it is, mitochondrialrescue.com.
Yeah, you can just click on my logo. Yeah, just click on my logo. We have everything lined up there, a nice URL lined up for this conference.
Yeah, for some reason, Linda clicked on something and it didn't go through. I just tested it on the page where we're watching the live stream, and it took me to the page that I just linked to, so I'm not sure which one she's clicking. Okay. Leandro, I just set the
just have her
link
call
in
me.
there
It's
for
no
you.
problem.
Yes.
You can call me, email me, it's fine.
So it's right there in the chat for that link. One more time, I'm going to type it just in case people miss it. Can you
Dr. Raja at mitochondrialrescue.com. I could be reached at Mitodoc on Telegram.
Oh.
Hold on one second.
Let me do it again. I
can't type that fast. Hold on.
Doing it to attendees. Hang on. Sorry. Although Leandro found it, he said he's doing it right now.
Okay.
While you're doing that, Jeff, I just wanted to confirm. Thanks again for your presentation, Dr. Raja.
You're welcome.
And the first giveaway that's going to be this afternoon is the CoreSense Elite Heart Rate device, and that's to anybody who's registered. From our kind of picking from our hat, Doug's going to do numbers. Is that correct? That's correct.
That's correct. And then we're going to be giving another one out next week. So we're going to see how much information, how much contact information we get. And then Sunday afternoon, I'll be contacting someone to send another one out.
Very good.
Very
good. Just wanted to clarify for everybody.
Very good stuff. There you go. Let me see. I'm gonna click on that link right now. Make sure it works for me. All right.
I've learned a lot at this conference. I mean, for instance, when you think about it, something gets glycated, there's no receptor needed there. Okay, you just need to have the glucose floating around, and it's going to attach where it's going to attach, and just like those unpaired electrons, it's just going to go where it needs to go, and we need to be able to stop that.
Yes.
Right. That's inflammation. Inflammation is everything.
Yeah, you don't want it to be attracted to somewhere where it shouldn't be going.
Yeah. And
for example, like cholesterol, everybody's paid so much attention to the problem with cholesterol, but it's actually because it's being attracted to the lining of the arteries that's been damaged by an inflammation or inflamed because of damage of too high insulin, too high sugar. And the cholesterol is actually just a Band-Aid, and it's a patch, and it's actually there for a purpose. And everybody's made such a big deal of the fact that it's there was from eating fat, and it's not. And we need cholesterol for so many other things, building our hormones.
It's a mechanism and a building block, not a toxin.
Yeah.
It's oxidized LDL, right? Carnosine helps with that too. It reduces your oxidized LDL. And if you have all those things, we didn't really talk about it, but even those plaques and Alzheimer's and alpha-synuclein that we see in Parkinson's, it actually will go in there and gobble that up. Just
I was
like it does.
thinking about that when you were talking about neurological things. That kind of popped into my head for Alzheimer's.
It does. But, you know, again, we like to stick just with the research that we know that we have, and we refer them to carnopedia.com. They can look at the research, and, you know, our bioenergetics of our product are through the roof. So no one is like our carnosine. So, and people can decide on their own. I mean, you know, but we prefer practitioner model. We won't be out there with the rest of them, because we're too good.
I think that lends credibility to the product.
Yeah.
And when you say practitioner model, this is not network marketing. This is not your friend becoming. No. This is a legitimate person being taught on how to apply the product.
Absolutely. No, I don't. I mean, although there's some products like the Zinzino, I kind of like that for my lipid membranes. So, you know, we can't throw out everyone in the same bucket, but no, this is not multi-level marketing. This is a practitioner-based training program, and it's a practitioner-based supplement program. You cannot get it. I don't sell it on my website. It can only be sold through practitioners. If there's a practitioner in the area, I usually refer that to them, and, you know, we don't play that game. No, it's not available at all except through our practitioners.
That was a question I was going to ask. Could someone contact you to find a practitioner who can teach them or support them or get this for them?
Yes. Or they could become a practitioner themselves. Yeah. You know, I mean, you know, we offer a conference discount for people who are not practitioners here too. So that's 20%. So we just want to get the word out. You know, that's it. You know,
and then they would be attached. Then they would be attached to you, or they'd be attached to you as their practitioner or someone else. There's going to be someone associated with them if they take the product.
We'll find a place for them. I mean, a lot of times we might not have a practitioner, because we have about 50 practitioners now. So we can just talk to them for 10 minutes, figure out what their dose is, and get them on a dose, and then just schedule a call with them. You know, 6 weeks from now, or just contact through the email. I mean, these are dietary supplements, so, you know, it's just a different way of thinking about it. But you could talk to people about energy and what prescriptions they're on and what they're looking for and what their lifestyle is like, and just do a 5 or 10 minute, and you can figure out what their dose is going to be, because it's not that hard to dose. There's 2 or 3 ways to dose it. And if someone's really sick, we probably would prefer to have an HRV or some kind of technical data to look at. But, you know, again, we're not making any diagnoses. We're just trying to improve outcomes, and, you know, we're not claiming to cure any type or treat any type of disease. But this is just a very powerful tool in your toolbox to help.
I think that's a lot of what is being presented throughout the whole conference, dietary changes. None of the practitioners, you know, we heard Dr. Brian Lenskes a lot over this past weekend, and he never claims to be, this is going to cure everything. But like people have mentioned, and maybe you even said, when it often helps with something, dietary changes or carnosine or, you know, this or that, people think snake oil, and they think I can't possibly do that much, but try it and see. That's a lot of what, you know, make sure you provide education, science, and support to feel confident with doing it, and the knowledge that comes along with it, and not just making claims. Because, you know, like Dave Unwin said this morning, he had people who, I couldn't believe he said someone shouted him in the street about what he's doing, without actually having a conversation about what are your patient outcomes? What do they look like? How are things improving for your patients? So he started documenting everything and making sure that the evidence and the things are documented so that people can see and gain confidence. It's really important that it's, you know, not just saying this is going to do this and then nothing to back it up. So
yeah, but, you know, I would say that people also know when they hear truth, right? So I think a lot of what you're saying, they kind of know that is truth, and perhaps they go to a conventional non-metabolic health practitioner, and they're saying, well, I'm going to up your Lipitor from 20 to 40, and I'm going to crush your LDL below 100. And they're like, yeah, well, okay, that's
what's important.
You know, that's traditional.
Heard. Yeah, mm-hmm.
That's traditional. So that's not necessarily their fault, right? And I find personally, like, let me just say, I'm a doctor. My wife's a doctor. Both my sisters are doctors. Both my in-laws were doctors. You know, I have lots of cousins. Everyone's a doctor. Okay, and they tend to be a little bit more closed than you would think. is what I would say very comfortable in their pharmaceutical world. And I've always been a student. I always consider myself, I'll never not be a student. And people get locked in. So you want to go to doctors that are still students, right? Because what we're learning about right now is literally the next phase of medicine. We are moving forward. Things are changing. And that's a good part of the information age, right?
Yeah, let's start testing and finding information in with the technology that's available, with things that are being found to, you know, we're excited to hear from Ben, and I know Keto Mojo's been working on trying to figure out how do we test insulin at a, you know, in a more frequent manner or an easier manner, so that we can test, are people's insulin levels going higher before their glucose levels are going higher? Because everybody's misunderstanding type 2 diabetes as a lack of insulin. But before that gets there, it's not being utilized correctly, and it's getting high insulin. People don't understand that. Endocrinologists don't understand that. It's fascinating to me that an endocrinologist who focuses on this specific thing doesn't quite understand this. So as long as we can continue all to raise awareness, bring education, say what Dr. Unwin said this morning in one of his slides, be a curious scientist, and clinicians and practitioners can be that, and remind our fellow practitioners and doctors and nurses and that we come in contact with.
And don't be afraid to change.
Don't be afraid to change. Jeff is a very good example of that.
There it is.
He had Dr. Brian Lenskes contact him. How many years has it been now, Jeff?
Oh, 3-4 years ago.
3-4 years. Completely changed Jeff's practice and his life. He's
rocked my world.
Nonstop busy. Most gyms are closed right now, and he's revamped his practice to be
just metabolic health primarily.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that, Jeff. Yeah.
So Leandro has made a comment. She said, in my field work in nutrition, we are relying on case reports to record and publish results, not medicine binary therapies. Now, I don't understand that, but Dr. Suresh is talking about a study, a peer-reviewed study that is coming out. It's just not out yet. That will be a case, a peer-reviewed study.
So we have we have different medical schools that we work with in Europe, and they presented in London, they presented in Dubai, and again, we have all of our links on the URL. You can see the research that we've done. So I agree. I like case reports. They're very much into a bench science, and we'll see when this Lipitor, metformin, carnosine extra study comes out. We'll see where that goes. I'm pretty sure that I think it's going to rock. I really, I just can't say anything. So I don't know. Actually, I don't even know. But knowing the product and how much work we did on the neurologic side, it's just going to make all the sense in the world to me that we're going to see the same type of results on the metabolic side. And we can get to the athletic side too, and that's great. But right now, I think people are sick out there. People need help.
Too many people.
People need help. Yeah.